So landscapes in IFTDSS are LCP files. So these are Landfire landscape files that contain all of the information needed to run fire behavior models. Landscape aspects like elevation, slope, fuel model, canopy characteristics. And the quickest place to create a landscape in IFTDSS is from the planning cycle, landscape evaluation. If you click Create Upload Landscape, that brings us immediately to Map Studio with the Landscape Tools widget open and the Create New tab selected. Alternatively, you could navigate to Map Studio, open the Landscape Tools widget, and select Create New. But the result's the same. And you'll notice on the far right tab, there is also an option to upload. So if you have your own landscape files of your local area, those can be uploaded to IFTDSS as well. And we've got some help content on that in the Help Center. But for the purposes of this video, we'll just be creating a landscape here. So from this point, we could either select an area of interest to define our landscape area. You could select Draw Mode to draw a rectangular extent. Or these coordinates here that are listed when you draw or enter a shape, these can be edited as well. So if I just had coordinates, I could type these in here, and that would define the extent of our landscape. But we've already got our tutorial extent, so I'll just go ahead and go to Select an existing AOI, select that tutorial extent. We're also given the area and length of our landscape. Maximum landscape size in IFTDSS is currently about 12 million acres. So we are way below that here. If we'd exceeded it, we would have gotten a warning saying that this is too big and we need to select a smaller one. From here, we have choices to select the version of Landfire. I'm going to go with the 2023 version. For fire behavior fuel model, we can choose between 13 or 40. And I'm going to go with 40. It's the newer choice. It's also not necessarily limited to fuels under wildfire conditions. So a little bit more choices, a little bit more versatile. I'm going to give this landscape a name. I like to do a relatively descriptive name for landscapes. In this case, Granite Creek LF23 uned. Just to help remind me that this is Granite Creek, Landfire version 23, and unedited. And I add these details in because in most places in IFTDSS, the landscape will show up in menus showing just this landscape name. You don't usually see a folder or anything like that. So putting a little bit of extra detail here in the name just helps me to know at a glance which landscape I'm selecting. I'll go ahead and select the Granite Creek Treatments folder. And if I hadn't created this folder yet, I could use that plus icon to the right to create a new folder from here. And we do have a notes field here, and this can be seen in my workspace. So while most places you just see a landscape name in IFTDSS, in the workspace you can actually see a little notes field that you can populate. From here, I'll go ahead and select Create. We see a notification saying that the landscape is being created. If we're going to be in Map Studio for a while, you can check your landscape progress and add it using the Add to Map tab. You can see it's been submitted, but there's no checkbox here next to it, so it's being submitted. It hasn't been built yet. This landscape process will happen in the background, so if there's other things you want to do in IFTDSS, we can navigate away from this page and do those, and it's not going to affect the landscape creation. So in my workspace, for example, we can see it's listed here. We've got our status as requested. So we've requested this landscape from Landfire. It hasn't been built yet. You can check that status using the refresh button. I'll note here, if we select this landscape, it can see metadata details on the right-hand panel, including our notes that we created. Now we can see the status is building. Landscapes typically do take a few minutes to create. Can be several minutes if they're very large landscapes. See, the landscape's now completed. And just to give you an idea on time, this landscape is about 264,000 acres and took about 8 to 9 minutes to build here. So this might be one of those set it, grab a cup of coffee, and come back steps. It's completed now. If I right click on the row, I can see file options. I'll go ahead and select view on map to view this landscape. You can see the landscape opens in Map Studio with our layer list widget opened up and fire behavior fuel model turned on for display by default. We could also collapse these, turn different features on, like canopy cover, stand height, and others. And you might have noticed here the extent of our shape was this turquoise box, and IFTDSS added a buffer area. So this is a 4,980 meter buffer area that's added to all landscapes in IFTDSS. And this is in here for modeling purposes. It provides an area for fires to burn into and out of the landscape for models like minimum travel time fire spread or landscape burn probability. A couple things to note on the buffer. If you edit your entire landscape, you can edit what's inside this buffer. And for models like minimum time fire spread and burn probability, you'll also see model outputs for this buffer. But when you run summary reports, you will only get the information inside of this turquoise box. So only the information for your landscape area of interest. So in that way, the buffer serves its purpose for modeling, but it doesn't influence or mess with your reporting outputs if you're just concerned with this landscape area in here.